Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie, Lizak, CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's founder and CEO. What's new this week, David?
Hey, Jessie. All's good here. Just been very busy. Obviously, we said last week, ever since the announcement with LiveRamp and Publicis, it's been pretty hectic, and I think a lot of people in the space, a lot of agencies, a lot of that are competing with Publicis, a lot of platforms that don't want to be reliant on an agency are looking for new solutions. So it's an interesting thing that's going on, and we'll see where it lands. But it's been good for business for us. So
awesome. Yeah, no, I love that. Great news. Yeah, so let's hope that buzz keeps coming. And today we've got another really great episode planned of Deconstructing Data. We're bringing on Melanie Borden. She's someone who's been on my show a few times. I've met her on LinkedIn. We actually met in person one time in Columbus, Ohio. But she's brilliant on LinkedIn, marketing, an extensive marketing background, even before she was visible on LinkedIn. I mean, she's been someone I remember, being just a LinkedIn lurker and watching her posts just blow up like years ago. But even before that, she was doing marketing in car dealerships and all types of industries. And, we've got a really great introduction for her. So let me tell you a little bit more about her. She is a personal branding strategist, speaker, and founder of the Borden Group. She helps executives and founders understand what they're actually known for online and how that impacts trust, credibility, and opportunity, which we know trust is so important, as we talk about a lot here on Deconstructing Data. But her work also sits at the intersection of personal branding, search, AI, and executive visibility, helping leaders become more discoverable. Welcome to the show, Melanie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Melanie, I'm excited to jump into this conversation and learn a little bit more from you. But why don't you kick it off for us first and give our viewers and listeners a chance to get to know you a little bit about your background and what led you to create the Borden Group.
Sure. So I've spent my entire career, as I say, in sales and marketing, pretty much ever since I realized that I could create a dollar with my words. I have been in sales marketing, and my last role right before the pandemic was I was working in automotive, as Jessie mentioned, working for an auto group, working for an entrepreneur in an auto group who also had a real estate portfolio, a startup, his own personal brand. And when the pandemic happened, I had just created for the in-house agency that I built a personal brand and LinkedIn training for the 80 plus salespeople or anyone that was customer facing in the organization. And at the time, I wasn't as focused on my own personal brand. I was really focused on supporting those around me and really the employer that I had worked for. And one thing led to another. As you know, the pandemic happened, and I realized that I didn't have this digital footprint or really a social network at all. I had never taken the time to really understand how to do it for myself versus doing it for businesses. When it came to Instagram and Facebook and X and even LinkedIn, I mean, I would show up, I would post something supporting the company that I worked for. If you scroll back in time to the beginning of time when I was first on the platform, you could see that it really was just the posting for my company that I had worked for. And one thing led to another, and I started posting on LinkedIn. And as I continued to post and post and post and post, what started happening was I started growing, and I wasn't intentionally posting to start a business. I was just creating what I now call a rainy day fund, where growing up, my parents had always said to me, Melanie, as you get older, you want to put away for your rainy day. If you ever need it, you want to save your money. And I think that there's a real dialogue there with your career and now what I would say your visibility, but really your personal brand and what the internet finds about you when, things happen in life and what you have to fall back on. So I ended up going during that time to go work for a MarTech agency in automotive, also as their VP of marketing. But what had started happening during that time is people started reaching out to me. And Jessie, I'm sure you've had a similar experience over time. People across industries, not just in the auto industry, but people in industries that I wasn't working in, like oil and gas, engineering, coaching, all over the spectrum that you could potentially imagine, not just within automotive, but, tech, startups. These founders and individuals started reaching out to me and saying, hey, can you do for me what you did for yourself? And so it just kept happening over time. And I decided to quit my job. And at that point, I started my business, which is now called the Borden Group. And, ever since, it's been great. I wrote a book that I published in 21, a children's book. But then in this year, in 2026, I published Theater of the Mind, which is about all the work that I've done since I came out with the Borden Group, and since I've been in this field, and since I've had my business. And it's been the craziest, most fun, wild entrepreneurial journey that I've ever had. And I would not have changed anything about it at all. And there's been some awards and other things that, I have received, lots of media and things like that. But the bottom line is 99% of everything that I've done has been due to creating a presence for myself in my career, whether that was offline or online.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great journey. Love the journey. Love the, just turning your passion into your business. And that's amazing. That's awesome. I'd love to dig into this first topic and jump right in, because the hidden KPIs of personal branding, it's something that I think a lot of people don't think about KPIs when it comes to personal branding. So I'd love to get your take on this.
Sure. This is one of the topics that I wrote about in my book, because a lot of times when someone comes to me and they want to work with me or they want to work with my company, they'll say, I've been watching you for 2 years, for 3 years, for 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And I wasn't ready. And so now I'm ready. And we have this conversation around the things that happen that don't show up in a dashboard. And it's also known as, some of the dark social that we've heard of, mentioned, over the last 10 years that people talk about, like what doesn't show up in a dashboard. But what's interesting when it comes to LinkedIn, which is one of the primary channels that I focus on working with my clients on, is there's different archetypes of people that show up when you start working towards something, right? So maybe you are coming to me and saying, hey, Melanie, we have a product that we need to launch in Q4, and our executive team is not active on LinkedIn, and we need to get spun up. And one of the KPIs that I always talk about is the people that come out of the woodwork, if you will, right? So the first type of person or KPI or people that are incredibly supportive, right? So you might have been connected with them for a long time. You may have worked with them for years and years and years, right? You might have not spoken in 15 or 20 years, but when you do an announcement or you start posting, they reach out and say, hey, I love what you're doing. Let's schedule some time to talk and how I can help you and how I can support you. So those are those supporters that are out there. And then you have the people who are just watching, right? We call those lurkers, right, Jessie? The LinkedIn lurkers. We have those types of people that are just watching, and they're going to wait until they're ready to make their move. Maybe they're watching to see what you're doing or to see how whatever you're doing evolves and if it will benefit them. And that's kind of like that trust building phase where they're trying to see what's going on. Not negative, not positive, just kind of neutral. And then you have the people that are outwardly negative, and they can show up in the form of negativity on posts. They could also show up as, in the form of negativity in person, right? So I remember when I first started posting on LinkedIn, I used to have a Monday morning leadership meeting at 8 a.m. And I remember posting on the weekend. And by the way, like in 2020, there was no one really posting on LinkedIn on the weekends, but I was. And I remember going into that meeting and thinking, who saw my post? What are they going to say? And I was so nervous about walking into those meetings with 25 other people and thinking, how are they going to perceive me differently? Are they going to perceive me differently? And just kind of like this mental spiral that I know a lot of people experience. And the reason I was thinking that is because that was what was happening. I was being made fun of in offices and meetings. People were saying it to my face that they didn't understand it. So those are all KPIs that I think are real. And I always talk to clients about it, because when you experience any of those are the ones where you're gonna experience, like, that's the early traction that I believe. And that's something that you can measure, because if someone is DMing you, if someone is sending you a text message, if someone is, sending you an email, those are all KPIs that don't necessarily show up in the back end of LinkedIn. But those are KPIs that I would put into a dashboard.
Yeah, that's great. It's so true. Like there's, you make a post on LinkedIn or anywhere for that matter. There's so many people that are just lurkers, right? And a lot of times people post and they're just like, I'm not getting enough views, or I'm not getting enough, engagement. But you don't realize that there's these people that are just sitting there and they're checking out, everything that you're posting. And then, one day you're just going to pop up and be like, yeah, you know what? I got to reach out to this guy or this person, because they really know what they're talking about. And I've seen that as well, where I'll make posts and, I might get lots of views, but just like very few comments or whatever. But then someone will literally say to me, hey, I saw, they'll call me, either send me an email or whatever. And they'll be like, hey, I saw your post on LinkedIn. I want to talk about, how you guys can help us. And so you got to remember that just because you're not getting a ton of engagement, a lot of people aren't going to like your post if they're just, if they're a lurker and they're really just, trying to learn from you. But once they learn enough and they realize that you know what you're talking about, that's when they're going to engage with you. And so you have to be aware that that is happening. And lurkers eventually, become prospects.
Definitely.
So true. Yeah, definitely. Melanie, a lot of time on this show, we talk about attribution. Marketers, we love to talk about data and attribution. And, I feel like you brought up the term dark social. It's something that, if we just sent our attribution data to the CFO to justify marketing spend, LinkedIn might be cut, content creation might be cut. So like you brought up dashboards. What else would you suggest marketers could do to bring the data, to the foresight of the executives and leadership who don't really understand what we're doing?
I think that it's really important to include those individuals in the process from the very beginning. And some people might be like, well, why would we include our CFO in this process? Well, because if the CFO doesn't understand the reasoning behind it and have kind of that education of why you're doing what you're doing, because the reality is that there's not necessarily always going to be this like hard line of attribution from the post that you're doing on LinkedIn to a complete dashboard of what you might be rolling up to that CFO. So having some sort of like an educational aspect, or at least looping them in the beginning process, so everyone's on the same page. And that's also another KPI, by the way, that I mentioned, because a lot of times if I'm working with a team, as an example, I might have 5 people that I'm working with. And let's say, for example, the collective goal is to launch that product in Q4, but it's also to share each individual's perspective. Well, let's say that 1 or 2 out of the 5 are not necessarily on board, even though they're included in the process. If they're not really wanting to do the thing, and that might not necessarily not be because of the fact that they don't want to support the company. They might just have other unresolved things going on why they wouldn't want to be seen, because it's not necessarily something for everyone. And so I see a lot of that too, where that can actually impact the success of campaigns, which obviously would have a negative effect on a campaign if someone's involved and they're not necessarily on the same page, which I'm sure you both have seen as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, I often find too, like, if you're talking like in my space, I can only give an example of what I've seen from my experience, but in my space, it's like highly technical. I'm talking about identity graphs. I'm talking about identity resolution, whatever it is. And I'm talking about something like technically that is maybe advanced. And so if there are people lurking and listening and learning from this, they might not want their competitors to know that they're learning from this, right? And so commenting is basically putting it out there that someone else can see that they're keen to this and that they're learning from this. And so I think there's a lot of that goes on too, where people don't want to comment because they don't want their competitors to know they're working with this company or they're learning from this person. It's giving them sort of that edge. And so, a lot of that's where a lot of this dark social comes from. It's like, there's people out there that are doing this, but they don't necessarily want their competitors to know that. And then, they'll contact me directly, but they're not going to comment on it. And so I've learned over the years, like, not to be concerned about posting and not seeing a lot of engagement, because I know those things actually do happen because I've spoken to people and they've told me this.
Yeah, it's really common.
Yeah.
It's really common. And I would say that some of the workarounds to that is, just having champions and the people that are internal that do want to have that success, because it just has a compounding effect.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the platform itself doesn't necessarily have the capability to show all the things that we're talking about. And the attribution also comes from so many things, because if someone is also running ads in another place, or let's say, for example, they're going to events, but they're seeing the message not just on LinkedIn, but they're seeing that person at a conference, they're seeing them in multiple places. It all compounds, and it really does create a wave of visibility when you have more than one person from a company that's actively working together to create this visibility, effort organically towards whatever, the company is working on.
Yeah,
I think you need to talk to LinkedIn, because like, I think some of your ideas that we're talking about here, it's like LinkedIn should have a dashboard that allows you to measure attribution from the point of someone seeing one of your posts and then, DMing you or even emailing you from it. It's like, you should be able to link all of those things together, and that would be really powerful.
Yeah. You can see this. Listen, you can see the saves, but you can't see who's saving your post, which would be really great if we could see who's saving the posts.
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we're getting some comments. I told the audience I would read them here in a moment. So just a couple. We've got Kenneth earlier was saying, not all lurkers are haters. Just some of us have nothing constructive to add. So we just watch and enjoy. Dave knows what's up. And yes, absolutely. Fair point. And then we had a longer comment here. Sorry to cover you for a second, Melanie. Thank you for raising this important topic. My perspective is that AI is reshaping executive visibility by becoming a key interpreter of our digital footprint. Leaders who consistently share insights, demonstrate expertise, and engage authentically online are more likely to build credibility, not just with people, but also with AI-driven platforms and search tools, which basically gets into our next topic, which is AI search signals and executive visibility. So you want to just kick us off there, Melanie?
Yeah. So the concept of executive visibility, just don't say that too many times. Executive visibility is essentially about being seen. It's going on podcasts like what I'm doing right now and what you guys are doing right now. It's, writing articles, it's posting on LinkedIn, it's going to industry events. Um, the goal is awareness and recognition, and people will know who you are. And I kind of tie that together with what I call searchable leadership, which is a chapter in my book where I talk about that's essentially the after effect of being an executive or being a professional that's visible, because it's about being found, understood, and trusted. And it's really what happens afterwards. So, for example, if a prospect searches for you, if someone is researching you, if a VC is interested in funding you, they're looking you up. The AI systems are all trying to determine if you're an expert in your field. So the goal with executive visibility and searchable leadership is essentially just so people know not only your name, but also what you're known for.
Yeah. So while we were getting this set up, I did this exact thing. So I went into ChatGPT and I asked for it to tell me a little bit about myself, without naming myself, but gave my name and my company, and it did. It did an interesting thing. So at first, it says some notable points about his background, and it lists a whole bunch of things about my background and my career, and then it goes on to say, from a business perspective, David Finkelstein is most associated with advancing identity resolution technology in advertising marketing, particularly around connecting hashed emails, mobile IDs, IPs, and other identifiers into a unified consumer profiles for audience targeting and measurement. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting, especially for someone who's in the digital marketing space, as the three of us are. And when I realized in 2020 that I didn't have a digital footprint, I was not focusing on AI like many people weren't. I kind of made that shift a few years ago to really focus on that as a part of the audience that I'm building when I work with someone. But it's essentially it's the outcome of all of the things. So having your podcast, like showing up on LinkedIn for years, um, you know, going and speaking at a conference. Those are all those things that people think, oh, I don't know if it's working. It is working. All of the things work over time. It might not necessarily happen in 30 days, but a lot of times it does. If you're intentional with what you do every single quarter, every single month, every single week, and just know that you're working towards a very specific goal of being discoverable, doing all these things matter. They do. They really do matter. And that's the whole point, is that you want whatever your outcome is, whether it's to have more users to sign up for your platform, or if it's to bring in more revenue because you're, hoping to create visibility with your team. They all matter over time, all of it. I mean, the outcome is just the discoverability, and they all turn into something. It's all working. It's not working the way that people normally think, in a transactional way.
Yes. Long-term value.
Yeah.
You have to really be willing to, not have immediate sales qualified leads from your branding type of efforts right away. And I think that's one reason Deconstructing Data has lasted so long is, well, hats off to David. We had a CEO who was willing to play the long game and allow the show to continue to go on, even in the beginning when it was kind of a struggle to find guests to come on.
Yeah.
But now it's, more of a well-greased machine. And we put out a last-minute request last week that we needed guests, and we had 43 responses. Like, oh my gosh, how do we even pick someone? But yeah, so it takes time and longevity and consistency. But what would be your actionable advice for anyone who really needs to get started with the new AI search signals and executive visibility?
I would say the best thing to do, because it can be overwhelming and a lot of people get content fatigue. And we talked about this many times, Jessie, about a lot of times when you're creating content, because a lot of business owners were also content creators, and that's just kind of part of the new form of leadership. I think picking a couple of channels that you want to focus on. Number one, podcasting is a great way to leverage other people's audiences too. If you are looking to focus on one thing, and I'll do a shameless plug and use myself as an example. I set a goal at the beginning of the year to go on, and I don't have a podcast, which hopefully at some point soon that will change. But for right now, I wanted to borrow other people's audiences more than just doing, a takeover on social or doing a collaboration post or a boosted post. I really wanted to speak to people who trusted the host. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go on 30 podcasts and it's going to be me talking about this specific topic. And then the content that I'm working on is going to be on this specific topic and about the work that I do. So pick a couple channels. I highly suggest podcasting because you can then take that and turn it into so many different forms of content that you can use for so many different things, whether it's, blogs, newsletters. You could even do white papers from a podcast. Posts are, just that's the tip of the iceberg of what you can do with podcast content. And then also LinkedIn. Most B2B, even B2C, everyone's human to human, everyone's on LinkedIn. I mean, it's such a hot channel right now, but it's been hot, right, guys? I mean, we've known this for a while that LinkedIn is the channel that people are on. Even if they're not posting, they're still consuming content. So pick a couple channels and commit to doing something once a week. Whether it's one post a week, one podcast a week, or one of each every week. And then over time, you look back at the end of the year and you say, wow, I now have this portfolio of podcasts. And all of a sudden, and that really ties into how all these AI systems are now looking at what someone's doing, because you're essentially showing up as the authority when you're doing that, when you're going on podcasts, and it's recognizing you. And it's not just you saying, hi, I'm great. I have a LinkedIn newsletter and I'm going to talk to you about the topic that I'm passionate about. This is what I know. This is what I've done. And this is how it will help your audience. And it's always well received to go on podcasts. It's always knowledge, sharing your knowledge is always a win. Always.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this podcast, you're our 204th guest. So we have, over 200 hours of content that's out there, and, that's out there forever. So it just, it never dies, and it just grows, and there's more and more opportunities to use that content, to reuse it in many different ways, like you said. So it's been a big win for us for sure.
Definitely. And then just the relationships that you build along the way with, the people who come on the show, the people who connect us to the people who come on the show. There's just a lot of network that goes on behind the scenes too that's just extremely valuable. But before we transition on, there's a few other comments I'll go ahead and read here real quick. So we've got Kenneth earlier was saying, what I like about LinkedIn is if you want an early adopter or cheerleader, there is 1000% someone out there who wants to support your best ideas and enjoys celebrating with you. That's so true. Sometimes you'll find more allies from strangers on LinkedIn than anywhere else. And then we've got LinkedIn user, which, by the way, you appear this way because of your LinkedIn data privacy settings in terms of like allowing third parties to see your information. So that's why we're not seeing your name. But LinkedIn user is saying, what digital footprint strategies work best for executives trying to attract international partnerships and technology transfer opportunities? I guess it's a question for you, Melanie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what I was just saying. I mean, I think that if that's what you want to focus on, then you need to focus on the podcasts that are speaking to that audience. You also have to have a strategy and the tactics to go along with it. Of course, I recommend, having a LinkedIn content strategy that includes posting and also a newsletter, but you want to focus on, that one person in that audience and where can you find them? And that would be the way to get started, is to focus on where those people are living and breathing and, what are they reading? Is it Harvard Business Review? Are they, on some other online site? Are they in a Reddit subreddit thread, where are those people located? I'm sure that's probably not where they're located, but you want to focus on those areas.
Definitely. Okay, so good. Well, let's transition into our third topic, which is EEAT data that builds digital authority. So can you talk us through what EEAT data is and how it builds digital authority, Melanie?
Yes, EEE, if I could say it, that would be nice. EEAT, experience, expertise, authoritativeness, don't say that while drinking, and trustworthiness. Essentially, this concept came from Google, but now the principles are extending beyond just traditional search. And this ties into the question that that last user just asked too. So for experience, have you actually done the thing? Not studied it, not hoped it. Have you actually done it? Because that real world experience is very valuable. And I will tell you that a lot of the clients that I work with have that experience. They've just never transferred it onto an online platform. Then you have the expertise, right? So can you demonstrate this deep knowledge? Can you go on a podcast and talk about it? Can you write an article about that? Do you have original insights outside of what you can generate in, Claude or in ChatGPT or Perplexity? Are you just kind of in that echo chamber repeating what everybody else says? And then authoritativeness. What other trusted sources recognize you? Have you been featured in the media? What podcasts are you going on? Are you speaking? Are you doing keynotes? Or did you write a book? Any industry recognition? Have you been featured in a trade pub? So authority a lot of times is borrowed before it's earned, essentially. And others vouching for you and talking about you is a signal for those AI platforms. And then trustworthiness. Is anyone verifying who you are? Are they writing reviews about you? Are you consistent? Are you transparent? All that evidence, it all matters. And, trust is definitely, it's definitely what's the word I'm looking for? It's a currency. Trust is a currency. And it's hard, especially, and I find this because I run my business primarily. I mean, I work out of my home and I travel to clients, but I would say that 98% of who I work with are people who I have never met before. And they're really trusting that I am the authority when they hire me and my company. So it's something where trustworthiness is so important. And it's something that the machines are looking for, and they're looking to see who else trusts you other than the things that you say that you do and what you say you are.
I love that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think that trustworthiness is so important. People overlook the importance of this because, people do business with people, and you think of the fact that, like, yes, people are buying a service or a product from a company, and they need to trust that company, but they want to trust the individual that they're talking to as well. And so I think that that's a serious thing that people overlook. And I think that especially people in sales, I have to say, like, I think that I've experienced a lot of salespeople that I felt uncomfortable with, where I didn't feel like I could trust them. And then I've experienced some that immediately I just feel comfortable with. And I'm like, yeah, this guy, I can trust this guy. And so I think that's a significant, like, differentiator in sort of both sales and marketing, and just having that level of trustworthiness with someone.
Absolutely. Yeah, trust comes up a lot here because we talk about marketers, we talk about data, and people don't trust advertisers anymore. That's why a lot of what we help with, Melanie, with like organic content is so valuable and helps build trust. But yeah, unfortunately, there have been some bad actors out there, and there even still are today. I mean, we talk all the time about data flaws where some marketer emails you some email with the wrong name, or they send mail to the wrong person, and it's just completely irrelevant or even offensive, because their data is off and then the trust is off. But yeah, I mean, especially now in the age of AI, it is
Yeah.
so hard to build trust as a marketer, and building an executive leadership visibility is helpful, because then you're humanizing it a little more. But in terms of just like wrapping up this topic of EEAT data that builds digital authority, how would you close that out, and what actionable advice would you give people who might be doing all those things that I just mentioned, running ads, sending digital mail, or sending direct mail, maybe sending cold email, seeing a decline in their return on ad spend, on, how would you suggest they address that in this day and age?
So what I would say is how they could address it is I look at this entire personal brand, I want to say movement, but it kind of is a movement. This personal brand industry, as you're looking at three channels essentially. You're looking at, can Google search and can AI systems find you, and can they trust you? So, just looking at some of those different platforms, and just, once a quarter, once a month, whatever your frequency is, just look at what you're doing and just see, go incognito. Don't go into any of these platforms with, your history turned on, because it's going to just pull from, what you've already searched for, or, your own data. But it's something that it takes time. It doesn't happen instantaneously. But if you think about each one of these as a silo, and if you think of, even though personal brand and company brand, they're two separate entities essentially, but they're very much connected. Just continuing the consistency of just connecting those, and just going back and looking and saying, okay, A/B testing is one of the things that I focus a lot on with people who I'm talking to, because if something isn't working, just the data tells a story. But as we talked about, sometimes the data isn't always the full picture. So look at what else you're doing and see what your visibility overarching looks like, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, that's great feedback.
Yeah. And then, also get some better quality data, so you're not targeting people poorly. No, I'm just kidding. But I digress. Let's move into tech stacks. We've got 6 minutes left, and we want to know, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack that empower you and your team?
Okay, so just in general, the things that I use like day to day, or some of the things that I'm working on with clients, I could go either way.
I mean, we usually look to like things that you use on your day to day that optimize your day, like, whether they're AI tools or just Slack or like whatever it is. Like, people have shared a wide variety of different types of tools, and it's always fun to listen to and hear, like, when people are listening to you and they're seeing you as an authority figure, right? And so it helps them understand, okay, well, these are the tools that she uses to manage her day and to do her tasks. And so it inspires people to help them improve the tool sets that they use. That's why we do it.
Okay. So yes, I use Slack all the time. That's how I communicate with my team. I love Slack. I think Slack is great. I'm also a Google user versus Microsoft, which, cybersecurity companies don't love, but I love Google. As far as LLMs go, I kind of bounce between three of them. Perplexity, Claude, and ChatGPT, and I'm constantly kind of like working against, like they're all working against each other. I kind of try to get different answers from them. One tool that I use that I love, that I talk about a lot is, so Google Alerts is one, because I love seeing the information that's coming out. Also, Answer the Public. Answer the Public is so good. Essentially, Answer the Public is a platform that was started by Neil Patel, who's a marketer, and it has an API with search engines, with social, and essentially you put keywords in and it serves back questions in real time what people are searching for. So it's a great content tool. And it's also great if you want to follow, the Google EEAT for experience, because it asks, have you lived this work? And you can get great keywords, if you have different keywords of what you're doing. I love that. I also use a platform. Well, it used to be called Harrow, Help a Reporter Out. And it was purchased by a company. And then this other company started called Featured, which is a great platform. It's another free, a lot of these platforms have free and also paid subscriptions. So Featured is now called Connectively. And what I love about it is this company purchased Harrow. And so all of the requests that journalists put out for all the things that we're talking about, like going on podcasts, writing articles, any bylines, etc. It's all within this platform. And they give you essentially 3 free quotes a month, which I love. And it's another great place for someone who's looking to get started, going back to that earlier question. And it also ties in with Google and the AI framework too. I also like the platform Quoted, where you can also find different sources from journalists, etc. What else do I use? I use Adobe, that whole suite, Canva. My tech stack is actually a little out of control.
I hear you.
Good ones.
Let me think what else. I'm trying to think of what else we use. WordPress is a platform that we use
For your
for
website.
websites. Yes,
Yeah.
no vibe coding over here.
I like what you said about the LLMs, because I do the same thing. Like I'll use like Claude Chat and Grok actually, and I'll sort of make them compete for which one I like the result better. Which one gives me the better result.
Right.
Yeah, I love doing that. I do it frequently, and and you can really get a lot of great answers on different topics. But Perplexity is great for sources when or citations. When I was writing my book, I wanted to find essentially citations for everything that I was talking about. Even if I had someone talking about something like, for example, Jessie, I would go into Perplexity and Perplexity would come back with a lot of different citations, and it's very accurate. So that's also great if someone's writing a book. Perplexity is great for citations. And I'm sure there's other things that I use that there's a bunch of creator apps that I use for content. I'm just trying to think of everything off the top of my head. But I can't think of everything. But I have a CFO dashboard that has my tech stack, and I know how much it is every month. And I know it doesn't fully cover everything I just mentioned.
Right.
No problem. Well, we appreciate you sharing. That was excellent.
Very comprehensive list. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. But in closing, Melanie, would you like to let listeners know how they can find you after the show?
Yes, absolutely. So I know that we're streaming live on LinkedIn right now. So on LinkedIn, you can find me there. You could Melanie Borden. You can also find me on my website, which is humantobrand.com. That's my company website. And then my personal website, where you can learn more about me, my book, the talks that I do. Also, I have an app coming out next week, and that's melanieborden.com.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Melanie. This has been a great conversation. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and close us out with a video. We'll see you backstage, Melanie. Everyone else, we'll see you back here next week at 4:15 p.m. Eastern. So audience members, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. Build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. We want to bring you closer to those marketing goals, and we're eager to guide you. So just visit BDEX.com. You can click on the Talk to an Expert button and get powered by BDEX. Deconstructing Data is the show that makes data make sense. Every Thursday, David Finkelstein and myself, Jessie Lizak, sit down with industry experts to unpack how data really drives marketing. We do this in plain language anyone can understand. If you want real insights, real conversations, and zero jargon, tune into Deconstructing Data, live on LinkedIn every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time.